Hare Krishna, everyone, and welcome back once again to our ongoing series on the glories of our most beloved Sri Vrindavan Dham. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarane. All glories to Prabhupada. So we're continuing with our mini-series on stimulation for ecstatic love, and this will be part 121. And herein we'll continue discussing Srimati Radharani's Lotus feet. In particular, once again, I could say a third class on the anklets that decorate those lotus feet. As we discussed in the last class, Sri Radha's ankle bells can be a source of joy, but they can also be a source of distress. And how that is so is described by Sri Rupa Goswami in his Ujjvala Nilamani 116. In that verse, a gopi is describing Radha and Krishna's pastimes the previous night. She says, last night Sri Krishna was standing under a tree in Srimati Radharani's courtyard, cooing like a kokila bird, again and again. Sri Radha understood his signal, but whenever she went to open the door, her bangles and ankle bells made such sounds that even Krishna could hear them. As a result, from inside the house, old Jatila, who is always very protective of Sri Radha, repeatedly called out, "Who is there? Who is there? Who is there?" And hearing her loud call, Krishna, with a distressed heart, spent the whole night outside under the tree. It's a famous pastime. So, now, a similar concern is raised whenever Sri Radha attempts to steal Krishna's flute, which she does quite often, actually. It's written that the tinkling of her ankle bells makes such a noise that it's hard for her to sneak up on Krishna and rob him of his vamsi. In the Sanat Kumar Samhita, verse 226, Vrindadevi says to Narada Muni, Andolika Shaka Rodo, Saki Bir Dolita Kavit, Kavchit Venum Karashashtam, Priyaya Koritam Hari. Translation. Sometimes Radha and Krishna enjoy pastimes on a swing, hanging from a tree branch and pushed by the gopis. At such times, Radha often steals the flute from Lord Krishna's hand. Let's recite that again. Sometimes Radha and Krishna enjoy pastimes on a swing, hanging from a tree branch and pushed by the gopis. At such times, Radha often steals the flute from Lord Krishna's hand. So, Rupa Goswami, Sri Rupa Goswami, confirms the same twice in his Ujjvala Nilamani. First of all, in chapter 8, that's entitled Srimati Radharani's Friends. There we hear him. Sri Radha's talking to her friend Chitra. "O my friend with the beautiful face, good fortune has now appeared before us. I can tell that Krishna has accidentally dropped the flute from his hand on the peak of Govardhan Hill. I shall go now and with an expert strategy take that flute and hide it on the hill." And in chapter 16, he writes, silencing her ankle bells and placing them on her arms as golden armlets, and carefully observing Krishna's eyes for any sign of his becoming startled, smiling Radharani stole the flute from Krishna's lap. Hare Krishna. Now, a perfect example of Srimati Radharani silencing her ankle bells in order to steal Krishna's flute is found in the following pastime. Once upon a time, during an autumn Rasa Leela dance, Radharani left the dance, and Krishna, noticing this, left looking for her. This fact is confirmed, actually, in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela chapter 8, verse 112. And I'll quote again here. When Radharani left the rasa dance out of anger and resentment, Lord Sri Krishna became very anxious because he could not see her. So it's described that he wandered through all the kunjas, the gardens around Govardhan Hill, calling out Radharani's name, until finally, somewhere near Jatipur, on the other side of Govardhan Hill, he found Radharani in a kunja with Lalita and Vishaka and some other special gopis. But when Krishna came up to Radharani, she turned her face away and said to Lalita, "Tell that rascal boy to go away." Tell that rascal boy to go away. So Krishna, he bowed his head and with, we can imagine with tears in his eyes, he left that place and he went to another kunj nearby where he laid down and he went to sleep. So then Radha, smiling, told some of her friends to find out where Krishna went and report back to her. Now eventually her friends found Krishna laying down, sleeping in that other kunja, with his crown off and his flute under his hand. And when the girls came back and told this to Radharani, suddenly all her gopi friends got the same idea at the same time. They thought in unison, no one is guarding Krishna. He's asleep. He's alone in the kunja. This is the perfect opportunity to steal his vamsi, his flute. So all together and very silently, they snuck into Krishna's kunj and found him sleeping. But a note here, actually Krishna wasn't sleeping. He was pretending to sleep. So the gopis started discussing how they were going to steal that flute. And Lalita said, this flute can only be stolen by someone who's very clever, very quick, and very fast. That was the criteria. Lalita said, this flute can only be stolen by someone who's very clever, very quick, and very fast. And immediately, all these gopis simultaneously turned around and looked at Sri Radha. She possesses all good qualities. So Radha smiled, because this was actually an opportunity for her to associate with her beloved. So what did she do? She tied her sari up like pants, then very carefully tied a cloth around her bangles and her ankle bells so they wouldn't make any noise. And she snuck up very quietly to where Krishna was. She moved carefully and deliberately on the ground, crawling like that, one move at a time, making sure Krishna didn't wake up. Finally, when she got to where Krishna was, she stealthily, it's described, stealthily reached out, grabbed his flute. Then she jumped up and ran, just like the wind, while all the other girls giggled and laughed and giggled and laughed. Of course, they didn't see, but as soon as the flute was gone, a big smile came across Krishna's face. So after some time, Krishna got up and came back to that first kunj and called out to all the gopis, "Hey girls, do any of you know where my flute is? Do any of you have my flute?" But they all looked at him like, "What do you mean, do we have your flute?" And Lalita said, "Just see. First you offend Radharani, and now you accuse some of her friends of thievery. You rascal boy." Brajalila. So at this point, Krishna came forward and started personally searching the gopis for his flute. They were all saying, "Don't touch me, don't touch me, don't touch me." But Krishna would just reply, "I'm just looking for my flute, girls." So at this point, the gopis started secretly handing the flute to one another, so Krishna couldn't find it. And eventually, it's described, one of the gopis handed the flute to Sri Radha, but right in front of Krishna. And Sri Radha just stood there smiling with Krishna's flute in her hand. So what happens next? Well, because she's the chief of all the gopis, Vrindavaneshwari, the queen of Vrindavan, Krishna couldn't just go up and start, roughing her up and looking for his flute. So to the joy of all the gopis present, and to the joy of all Gaudiya Vaishnavas forevermore, past, present, and future, Krishna knelt down in front of Radharani and taking her hand, begged her to give his flute back. He knelt down in front of her, took her hand, and begged her, please give my flute back. So in essence, this shows the power of pure, unadulterated love for Krishna, that it is so powerful, it can control the all-powerful Lord. Radharani has the topmost love, and Krishna is controlled by that love, so he kneels down before her and begs for his flute. Or we can say that Krishna allows himself to be controlled by the love of his devotees. Another way to put it. So that is the intimate, sweet love of Braj, which is not found even in Vaikuntha, the official kingdom of God. Rupa Goswami writes very nicely about this Braj Leela in his Lalita Madhava, 1038, where the gopis are speaking. Dear Krishna, the fragrance of the mellows of your pastimes is spread throughout the forests of the glorious land of Vrindavan, which is surrounded by the sweetness of the district of Mathura. In the congenial atmosphere of that wonderful land, you enjoy your pastimes with your flute dancing on your lips, and surrounded by us, the gopis, whose hearts are always enchanted by unpredictable ecstatic emotions. You enjoy your pastimes with your flute dancing on your lips, and surrounded by us, the gopis, whose hearts are always enchanted by unpredictable ecstatic emotions. Shri Vrindavan Dham, Jaho. I would like to conclude today with a description of the different types of ankle bells that Srimati Radharani wears. Again and again I say we're blessed to have so many details of Vrindavan which act as even little tiny details as stimulation for ecstatic love. Of course we may not have that ecstatic love, but we're on our way by Prabhupada's grace. So these different types of ankle bells, they're described by a Vaishnava poet named Haridas of the Nimbarka Sampradaya. I did some research. He was a court musician in the court of Rajman Singh and credited with a large body of, how could you say, devotional compositions, especially in the Drupad style, the music we're talking here, the Drupad style. And eyewitnesses, I saw this in the Sri Vrindavan Research Institute. Eyewitnesses wrote that when he sang his poetry in this particular Drupad style about Radha and Krishna, plants would begin to flower, even in winter. Clouds would start forming and burst into rain, even in the summer. Fires would break out and oil lamps would light up spontaneously. So here is his beautiful description of the various kinds of ankle bells that Srimati Radharani wears. The pair of ankle bells of Sri Radha known as Manju Bhashini and Manju Ghosh are the two divine pairs of ankle bells that sound like peacocks. The pair of ankle bells of Sri Radha known as Vidruma Avali, sound like thunder on a cloudy, rainy day. The pair of ankle bells of Sri Radha known as Sambhashini, sound like the chatter and chirping of flocks of sparrows at evening time. The pair of ankle bells of Sri Radha known as Durut Chalini, sound like the mooing of cows when they quickly run towards water to drink. And the pair of ankle bells of Sri Radha known as Mantra Duni, sound like the hymns from the mouths of young Vedic brahmanas in the Gurukul of Brihaspati and the heavenly planets. And the pair of ankle bells of Sri Radha known as Shurduni, S-U-R, Shurdini, sound like the water of the Ganges breaking against its banks at high tide. So beautiful. The pair of ankle bells of Sri Radha, known as Gaja Vadini, sound like the conversation of swans in the early morning. And the pair of ankle bells of Sri Radha, known as Ramnika, N-I-K-A, Ramnika, sound like the high notes of a veena played by Gandharvas in Svargaloka. Fortunately, she has many ankle bells, so this is just ongoing nectar. The pair of ankle bells of Sri Radha, known as Priya Vadini, sound like the ringing of 1,000 bells, in which every bell produces a different melody that blends in sweetly like a beautiful symphony. And I was reading, she wears these very special ankle bells during different rasa dances to please Krishna. So the poet Haridas, he goes on to mention that there are countless divine ankle bells in her treasure box. And these were just a few that were revealed to him, he says, by the great Rasik saints of Vrindavan, the great Rasik saints of Vrindavan, and by the mercy of his spiritual master. Everything comes by the mercy of the spiritual master. So understanding that Srila Prabhupada, for all of us, is the revealer of the Dham. We would not have access to this very deep transcendental knowledge had not it been for his mercy. To walk the plank up the Jaladuta and sail halfway around the world to America. And I was reading in Prabhupada Leelamrita the other day, he said, or it said, written that when he got off the boat for the first time in America, he said, he told later, I did not know whether to go left or right, but the rest is history. And we're somehow part of the history of Srila Prabhupada's legacy by his mercy. So in that same light, we pray for mercy from our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. O beloved spiritual master, you are always in the presence of the cowherd girl Radha, the daughter of King Vrishabhanu. Please award me service at your lotus feet, which are the proprietors of devotional service. Please place me in the ocean of joy by bestowing upon me happiness in the mellows of service at the feet of Sri Radha in the groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Hare Krishna, all glories to Prabhupada. Prabhu's, we have another class, I think one more class, the fourth class, about Sri Mati Radharani's lotus feet and particularly the ankle bells. So I'm back in Vrindavan now for a couple of weeks. I came to the celebration, the 50th anniversary of Prabhupada opening Krishna Balaram Mandir here and installing Gaur Nitai, Krishna Balaram and Sri Radha Shyama. It was a wonderful week with many devotees. Many Prabhupada disciples came. There were memories and there were kirtans and there were movies and all about Prabhupada. It was wonderful. So I've been here. It's, summertime's coming. It's getting really hot. But in a couple of days, I'm going to Africa. Why would one ever want to leave Vrindavan? But we leave like Prabhupada did, following in his footsteps, to spread the chanting of Hare Krishna and the glories of Vrindavan all over the world. So probably my next address will be from Africa. So thank you. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radha Shyama Sundar ki, Vrindavan Ishwari Shri Mati Radharani ki, Mayapur Dham, Gaur Nitai ki, Shri Krishna Sankirtan ki, Transcendental Book Distribution ki, back home, back to Godhead ki, Jai Jai Sri Sri Radhe